Hey everyone, we're at the Prosper Show. I'm Sam Merriweather from Quiet Light, joined by Chuck Mullins from Quiet Light, and a special guest, Lesley Hensell from Riverbed Consulting. Thank you so much for being here, you guys. Okay, so running your own Amazon business is complicated enough. Transferring is a nightmare. Does it have to be? What are some of the things that people can think about when they're transferring their business?
So it's very scary for a lot of sellers and even for the people acquiring their accounts. One of the points of confusion is that in the BSA, which is the solutions agreement that you sign on to when you sell on Amazon, it says in one place that you can transfer your account to someone else, and it says in another place that you can't.
How convenient.
So there's a reason people get really scared about this. So we actually work with a lot of clients on this issue, and I can tell you, you can transfer your account. So that's just the first thing I want to let everyone know, because in the past, the BSA only said you couldn't. So it does say that you can, but what's really important is to do it in an orderly way that doesn't set off the alarm bells at Amazon. It's not that you're trying to do anything wrong, but you're trying to fly under the radar and that they aren't having any red lights flashing because you do it in such a way that it sets off their risk meter.
Okay. So what are some of the things that could set off some of those alarm bells?
So we recommend to clients that they do not change all of the information in the account at one time. You get all of your formation documents, you make sure you have all your verification information, both for the buyer and for the seller on this account. So you've got all the documents lined up, but then there's kind of a transfer order that you're changing. Like, you don't want to change the address, the banking information, the credit card, all on the same day. You don't even want to change the warehouse addresses all on the same day, because they will think that you have been compromised and they will fraud the account. They call it VCAC, Veteran Customer Account Compromise. You don't want a VCAC, because even if you're the good guy, it can take a lot of escalations to convince them that you're the good guy.
Yeah, and we probably see this a lot with some of our clients, that obviously for the business of helping people sell their business, they're going to have to transfer at some point, and I'm sure you've had maybe some issues with that as well.
Yeah, some minor issues, but I've never seen an account get any sort of like long-term suspension or anything. It's usually a day or two of just trying to work through the system to get the account either just reopened. And I think one of the things we often see is somebody who doesn't have two-factor authentication could be a problem. Like, you always want to have the two-factor authentication. And then my understanding is sometimes, I think the one you're just mentioning, where it's not just two-factor authentication, you have to escalate it and take it to another level.
Absolutely, because they lock out your ability to even log into the account. And sometimes it'll let you reset your password, but sometimes that doesn't work.
Yeah.
So then you have to convince them, and then we have special links to certain departments so that they will actually help you to reset the password. But one mistake people do sometimes make, though, is that they don't have an LLC set up, or they don't have the formation documents and everything doesn't actually match. So then when you start to transition, it will set off the alarm bells, and you can't have a longer suspension.
What's the longest suspension you've seen? Like, have you ever seen anybody go to transfer account and Amazon say, no, you violated terms of service, you're off? Or is it more of like a temporary thing?
It's a temporary thing. It can take a couple of weeks. And I'll tell you why. Because the frontline seller performance people do not feel empowered to turn this account back on, because the technology has told them that you're a bad actor. So they really believe their technology. And when there's a program that says bad actor, that makes them really afraid. They're actually judged by whether they turn people on when they shouldn't or turn them off when they shouldn't. So almost always we have to escalate that to an executive to get it. And so the time is just getting an executive to care, finding one who will listen to your story and will help you out.
And depending where you are in your exit, timeline, a couple weeks could really be something that you don't want to just lose for something so, not silly, but something that could have been prevented.
Right, and it makes everyone very unhappy. We've had people come to us when they're in this situation and no one is happy. The buyer, the seller, they're all very sad, they're all very anxious. You just don't need that to happen to you.
So are there any things you should do, you think, in advance? So like, we always recommend that you reach out to Amazon and use very specific language about, hey, I'm updating or actually tell people, can you tell me how to update my EIN, my entity name? And I always say, don't use words like sell or transfer.
Right.
Would you recommend something like that?
Sometimes we've had people use, we are changing ownership structure because you're not saying buy or sell, which could set off an alarm bell with someone who's still stuck on that one part of the terms of service and not the other. But then the other is to be very orderly in how you change things. We have a process that we actually walk people through, but you can create your own and say, okay, I'm going to make this change in my account. I'm going to wait this number of days. Make this change in the account, wait this number of days. And the financial need to be your bookends. So there's two things. You've always got your bank account and your credit card. Those need to be far apart. You do not want those close together.
Good to know.
And this is a service that you offer people?
We do. We call it transition service for account transitions. If you're a small account, the chances of you having a problem are really small. You can do it on your own. If you have a really large account, it's a much bigger chance of you having a problem because you're going to set off the fraud bells because there's just more transactions. There's just more dollar value, and that does matter. So we do offer a service where we walk the clients through step by step. Also, if they don't know where to change their EIN, if they don't know where to change the warehouse addresses, some of that's kind of hidden in there. If you're not a long-time operator, you might not be able to find them. So we get on Zooms and say, okay, click this button, click this button. We get both parties on the call. It's totally transparent so that everyone feels good about what's going on.
Let's say, imagine, if you wanted to do this a year ago, the process has probably changed or the location of certain things has changed. You guys, I'm sure, are like right on top of making sure you know exactly where we are today.
It's like every week there is something different. They want to drive us all crazy, I think. But yes, the process does absolutely change. And also we will see trends. So we will notice like the shipping and warehouse addresses used to not be a thing. That did not get anyone caught up in anything. And now those warehouse addresses and the returns addresses can. And especially if it is a warehouse address that, let's say it's an aggregator who has a warehouse, so they have many accounts there. So instead of transitioning your account, all of a sudden you're in a linked account situation where they're thinking that you have ownership of multiple accounts and some of them are in the same category because let's say you're selling to an aggregator in health and beauty. So of course you're in the same category, right? So these are the things we definitely want to avoid. And you don't, a year ago, no one cared. Right.
So maybe that leads into another question. So people often say, oh, you can't have more than one account. But we also know that aggregators have dozens of accounts, right?
Yes.
So can you have more than one account? Can you have more than one account?
See, that's such a great question. Amazon changed the rules on this about a year and a half ago. And you can have more than one account, which is very exciting. I'll tell you the number one thing they care about. They never want you to sell the same ASIN on more than one account. That is really what the whole rule is about because they have to avoid price fixing. When you think about it from Amazon's perspective, it'll suddenly make sense. The FTC is all over them, the Federal Trade Commission, and a big part of that is price fixing. Right. So you cannot have one seller, 1P and 3P, or two different accounts selling on the same ASIN. So it's really smart to stay away from the same category unless you really need to be. All you have to have is a valid business reason to have more than one account. That can be, I sell retail arbitrage and I have my own brand, or I sell in pets and I sell in books, and those brands don't make sense. If you have a valid business reason, you can definitely do it, but you still need separate LLC, formation documents, you need a separate bank account, a separate credit card. You still have to be very smart, and you have to make sure you never accidentally, and it happens, mix inventory on accounts, because that will get you taken down faster than anything else. Sometimes they make mistakes on things like addresses or credit cards.
Sure.
They make mistakes and have false positives. Those are easy to solve. But if you actually sold the same inventory, they're going to make you pay.
And so Riverbend does a lot of troubleshooting, it sounds like, but it also sounds like people can come to you beforehand and be able to not have any of this be an issue.
We love when people come to us beforehand. In fact, for all kinds of account issues. So we help people with ASIN suspensions and account suspensions. If you've got a pattern of ASIN suspensions and you come to us, we can help you solve the underlying issue so your account doesn't get suspended. Same idea. And for transitions, absolutely the same thing.
Sure.
What's the number one thing that people do come to you for?
Right now, so since September, we pull our data every quarter. Since September, the number one thing is linked accounts. And lots of them are false positives. And then many of them are things that are so frustrating and upsetting. Like, let's say that Chuck here, when he was in college, he decided to resell his textbooks. And it was a really long time ago. No offense, Chuck, but it was a really long time ago. It wasn't like yesterday. And so you sold these textbooks, but then your buddies decided to like go to the lake, and so you never shipped them. And Amazon shut down your seller account, right? But that was so long ago, you're like, oh, I'm never going to need that again. But then you start up your own private label brand. But 15 years later, Amazon links those. And so they will take down your private label brand account because of some textbook account. We have that. The oldest account I've ever reinstated was 14-year-old suspension, and it was for exactly that reason. So you can get linked because you lived with someone in the past. You were married to someone. You had a boyfriend or girlfriend. You worked in an office with a seller, and you were both online all the time on your accounts. They get suspended, and it takes you down.
All right, so I know this can be a very stressful time for people when they do get an account suspension.
Mm-hmm.
Should they freak out? Like, are most of the problems solvable in a relatively short amount of time?
Most of the problems are solvable. Your definition of relatively short period of time, it kind of depends. Easier account suspensions, sometimes we have them up in 1 or 2 days. And so that's just a blip on the radar. If things are more complex or if they're more difficult, like code of conduct, review manipulation, Amazon's naughty list, those can take a couple of weeks or even longer. What's really important is to not panic, so you don't ask Amazon questions. That's the number one mistake. You get panicky, so you're like, what are you talking about? Can you tell me which orders or what you think I did? They are not going to help you. You are expected to know everything. They're not going to help you. So don't panic. Don't ask them questions. And then sit down and really think through the issue. You cannot be defensive. You have to find out what, even if it wasn't your fault, even if the buyers are being ridiculous or want a free return, or you think it's a black hat attack, you have to find out how to admit something, and do it in a calm, rational way. And if you can't do that, you really need to get professional help. That sounded bad. I meant like a service provider like mine. And then
Your advisor.
yeah, I didn't mean like
It's an emotional time for people.
Right.
Yeah.
This is their life.
Stressful.
This is their life, right? Their livelihood. When something's going wrong, and you feel like there's nobody you can actually talk to, and nobody's
Right.
going to listen. It's scary, right? So it's a natural reaction to maybe overreact in that case, and not see
It's
some.
the whole.
Yeah.
Because once there's not a limit on the number of appeals you can submit, but if you burn yourself with irrational appeals or blaming appeals or ones that don't make sense, they will take each appeal less seriously, and you're going to have fewer looks at the real information and the real appeal. And then there's certain appeal types that I recommend that no one do themselves unless you have done this for a living. Code of conduct, never do it yourself. Counterfeits is another one. Anything that's a legal issue. Code of conduct is often legal issues as well. And then review manipulation. You do not want to do those yourself because you will dig that hole before you figure out the code of what they're looking for. Crack the code.
Yeah, so many mysterious words. But I think that's why it's like, this is your day to day, right? So for you, this is,
Yep.
I guess you're so calm while you're speaking about this. And I got thinking Amazon sellers, if they're in this position, like I understand the freak out moment. But if you work with someone who's been doing this every day, there is a way out. It might take some time, but there are solutions.
Absolutely.
Which I think is really important to know. I think people hear the, like you said earlier, suspension, and they're just like, that's it, it's over. But it's not.
Well, in our team, we have 16 ex-Amazonians. Many of them worked in seller performance and account health, so they've been there on the other side. They get all the mechanics. But then we've trained everyone, and I've trained everyone on our team to be that calm, reasonable, rational voice. And we are on the seller's side. We're not out to get them. I know they feel like everyone's out to get them when this happens, because gosh, how could you not feel that way? So we're really trying to be helpful, even on an emotional level and a business level, as well as getting the account back. Being upset, I tell them, give it to us and sleep. Let us be the ones who are worried about it, because we can be worried about it as professionals,
Right.
just like your tax accountant if you're audited. He's worried, but as a professional, so he's still sleeping at night. Hand it over to someone and don't just stew on it all the time. It'll drive you out of your mind.
So you mentioned that linked accounts is kind of the current problem you're seeing.
Yes.
A lot of. What are some other problems that you've seen in the past?
Well, right now, there's a lot of expiration issues for ASINs. And it's important for sellers to know Amazon says they are first in, first out at their warehouse. They are not first in, first out at their warehouse. That is a lie. It does not work that way. A lot of times Amazon will take returns and they will resell them, and they are 4 months old and the inventory is expired. Very important for sellers to manage their ASINs in such a way that if you're sending in replenishments on expiring inventory, you set up a new FNSKU. So I send in this month's on an FNSKU, next month's inventory on an FNSKU. Once I've sold out of that, I close that SKU, and then any returns that come back go into unfillable, which is where we want them because they're old and they could be expired. So you can't expect Amazon to manage that. That's a huge one. Amazon actually considers selling expired inventory to be fraud. Wow. So it rises to that level. It is worse than inauthentic in their minds, so you've really got to watch that. And then another huge thing right now is restricted products. Oh my goodness. It's all on, okay, they don't suspend with a bot. A human suspends. But the bots find the things for the humans to suspend, and a lot of times the humans are behind on their work queue. So they just start accepting whatever the bot has told them. So I had a client last week. Y'all are gonna love this.
Yeah, give us the dirt.
We sell a blanket that is mostly for children. It has glow-in-the-dark stars on it. It's really cute. It's their biggest seller. It had been down for weeks because it was flagged as an adult product. So they had appealed this multiple times to Amazon, and Amazon just kept telling them no, and even gave them the dreaded, "We will not respond to further inquiries on this matter." And so there's no common sense being applied. And then they came to us, and I have a great appeal writer named James, and he got it fixed overnight because he knew the magic words because he used to work at Amazon. But how ridiculous is that? So there's a lot of that restricted products that happens because you've got a word in your listing that is misinterpreted or applied wrongly. Back during COVID, it was face masks. So you could sell a ski mask, like for skiing, or a beauty mask, and all of your products went down for restricted products. And then Amazon would not apply that common sense. So that's ginormous right now.
So do you guys offer any auditing services, or are you more reactive services?
So we do both. We've done catalog auditing for people. We will review their ASINs, run all their reports. My favorite thing to tell sellers is the smartest strategy you can have is every month you find your worst performing ASIN and you fix it. So we can help people find that worst performing ASIN objectively, especially private label sellers. We all have ugly babies, but we think they're beautiful. So sometimes you need someone to tell you your baby's ugly. So we will go through an account and we will tell you where your ugly babies are. And that doesn't mean you don't sell them. It means we fix the packaging. We improve the way you're delivering it to FBA. We fix something, fix the detail page so that you won't have this ugly baby anymore. So we absolutely have some proactive services to offer. And we have clients who are on a monthly service with us. So anytime an ASIN problem comes up, we just take care of it. They don't have to think about it. We might ask them a question or two to understand what the problem is, but we're handling the bulk of the work so that stress can go away.
Yeah. It's so helpful to have that third-party perspective. We're all a little biased, especially if you're in the weeds,
Yes.
like how you can't even see necessarily what the problem is, even if you didn't like it the most, that particular SKU or product.
The reason my business partner, Joe Zalta, and I met is because he was suspended and he had an ugly baby in his account. And when I told him what the problem was, he didn't believe me. He was like, "It can't be that." It was something about the packaging and a lid that kept popping open and the product would come out. And I'm like, let's objectively look at your returns and look at your reviews and your feedback. Everyone is saying it. And then eventually he was like, "Oh, I guess you're right." And you know what? It turned out to be right, but he needed someone else to show him because he just believed his warehouse guys wouldn't let this happen. It was all great. I get that. I've been a seller since 2010. I've had my own blind spots.
Yeah, absolutely. This was so informative, so helpful. Is there anything else about Riverbend you want to share with us?
How can people contact you?
Yeah.
So you can go to our website. It's riverbendconsulting.com. We have a phone number there that we actually answer our phones.
Stop it.
Yes, every day during business hours. And we love to talk to sellers. So even if we can't help you, we can direct you to someone who can. Or you will call and say, "Is this even appealable? Can I fix this problem?" We love talking to people. We're not going to charge you just to talk to us. We want sellers to have resources. It's very important to us. Yeah, so please reach out. And then also on LinkedIn, Lesley Hensell, I serve up fresh, hot Amazon content, usually 5 days a week. So if you guys want to know the trends and what's going on, please connect with me or follow me there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sitting down with us today. This was awesome.
Thank you for having me. It was fun.
Absolutely. Thank you, Chuck, for sitting down as well. And we'll catch you guys next time.